Welcome to Ladies Talking Leafs. I'm Chris.
And I'm Sil.
How's it going? We are back, yes, with our bonus episode. This is exciting. We do have to say, first of all, we were going to come at you last week in the, a week after our special draft or our draft episode. And, but then we thought, with the whole signing of Wayne Simmonds and everything on the Friday before, and we thought, no, we're going to wait because we know Kyle Dubas has something else planned, and he definitely didn't disappoint. He definitely had something planned on the weekend with the signing of Joe Thornton, and I think we have everything. Well, for now, anyways, I think Kyle Dubas has everything covered. But so we decided to wait, coming at you with this bonus episode, and I've actually found something interesting on social media with Wayne Simmonds joining, being the first player that was signed for free agency for us. And that's the guy actually that I am most excited about, bringing that physical presence and that. But he's the most popular Leaf on Twitter now. So he's number 1. And then Tavares number 2, Matthews number 3, Marner is 4, and Morgan Riley is 5, which I did try and look up Joe Thornton, but I couldn't. I don't think he's on there. I couldn't find it.
He might not have a Twitter account.
Yeah,
Marlo doesn't. Marlo, whenever he speaks on Twitter, it's through his wife's Twitter account, which is so
Christina funny. Marlowe's account. So I don't think he's on there. But I thought that was interesting that Wayne Simmonds has become the most popular on Twitter for being followed. And the other thing I thought of is for the KHL, and we are going to talk about a little bit about the draft, part 2 of the draft, which seems like so long ago. It was, but it was a couple of weeks ago now. But all these kids being picked out of the KHL and the Swedish leagues. But I just feel that I need to get a KHL subscription to watch these players. I'm on Twitter. There are some people that actually post replays of scores and stuff like that, of goals that some of our guys have scored. But
Lettinen had another beauty, I guess, today.
Yeah, so people like him and Amirov, that are our first round pick from this year. He's been on there.
Our goalie too, that they got too. He's had some action also as an 18-year-old, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, he played his first game there. Yeah, so so that's I just think I need that. Yeah, and
so we can still watch some hockey during this downtime, because I know they got us sucked back in. And then it just feels like it was just all taken away too soon. Anyway.
Yeah.
So this time last year, where were we, Christine? We were on the road to Detroit. So it was, it feels like any thought of road trips is so far, far down the road, so to speak. But
it's
last
depressing.
year, I mean,
it's depressing in a way. Because like you were just saying, there's no hockey now, and normally October, that's when everything starts, and there's none of that. We do have some, obviously we're doing this bonus episode because there's stuff to talk about, but it's not related to actual games being played. It's not related to doing the road trip or planning for a road trip. And
exactly, that is the key, is that, the planning of one is that something that we normally get a chance to look forward to. And this year, that's something that we can't really do. Fortunately for all of you listeners, though, you can relive some of our road trip fun through some of our former episodes. If you want to listen to our episode in November and our episode in February, we talk about some of our road trip antics on our segment On the Road with Chris and Sil. So in November, we talked about our trip to Detroit, which was fantastic last year. And then in our February episode, we revisit our trip to Nashville, which is, I think we can both agree, one of our favorite spots to go see a hockey game. So definitely check those 2 episodes out. Another little bit of a note that we have is that we wanted to, again, going back to the draft, congratulate Emily Castonguay, who is Alexis Lafreniere's agent, and she is blazing a trail for women in the game in hockey as a female player agent. So we thought that was definitely an important milestone in our game and notable. So congratulations to her. So moving on to our outline of what we're going to cover today, we are obviously going to cover the free agent signings and a trade that Kyle Dubas made. We're going to take a quick look back to day 2 of the NHL draft, which obviously, like Chris said, seems like ages and ages ago. And we'll kind of take a peek at what might be next for Kyle Dubas. Could there be more? So without any further ado, let's get on with our show.
Okay, so free agent signings. That's our topic number 1. First of all, we just want to say we're not going to get into the, with all these pickups that we got, the signings, we're not going to get into where they're going to play, the line combinations, the deep pairings, and get into the nitty gritty of that stuff. We're going to save that for another episode. For now, we're just going to go through each player signing and what they bring to the team and just our thoughts on each player, basically. So we're going to start with Wayne Simmonds, who we picked up, like we said in the intro, on the day of opening of free agent signings on October the 9th. He's a right winger, 32 years old. He signed for 1 year at $1.5 million. And we're going to hear that 1 year quite a bit, which I think is a really good thing, actually, but we'll get to that later. So, yeah, so he's from Scarborough. He obviously brings the grit and toughness to our lineup. He has a charity, Wayne's Road Hockey Warriors, which helps underprivileged youth pursue their hockey dreams. And this shouldn't be overlooked, I think, because I know MLSE or the organization, Shanahan, the off-ice contribution to the community is really, really big. So basically, in my opinion, the money that Kyle Clifford was going to get basically went to, they had to fill that role basically, and it went to Wayne Simmonds, and he's going to bring that voice to the bench, I think, too. Like you always saw, like I'm sure Sil, you remember, like on the bench when, let's say there was down points in the season, it was a roller coaster season, but when there was down points, there was nobody on the bench that was, I mean, Clifford was there from February, I guess, but before that, like there was nobody really to uplift the spirit, like to get the guys going on the bench. It was pretty quiet. Like a lot of people, they'd even say that you'd skate by the bench and you couldn't, like there was just no enthusiasm. I won't mention another player that used to bring that. Anyways, so yeah. And the other bonus that I loved was the fact that he chose to come here, which we mentioned in our last episode. We mentioned it briefly about how like he had other options and the Habs did actually offer him more money, but he chose to come here, and that I knew he would. Like it just, he's from here. And yeah, so I'm excited about it. He's going to bring that that element to the lineup that we're lacking quite a bit. And yeah, what do you think of Wayne Simmonds?
I have to agree with like 100% with everything you said. I think he is going to bring experience and enthusiasm. He, like you said, even with all of his charity work and everything, he's got a strong character, which is, I think, definitely something that the organization's always looking for. And the other thing is, these are, and I think this is also something that's going to be echoed throughout all of the signings, really, is they made a point of bringing in competitive guys that are hungry to win. So when some of our more talented people are sort of just kind of chilling and relaxing, there's going to be people now in our room like Wayne Simmons that are going to basically be saying our job is not done and pulling them up by the back of their jerseys and saying, come on, let's get moving here,
Yeah, and I'm going to mention something about it towards later on, but it's definitely bringing a different dynamics to the room, basically, with all these signings. But so then we got TJ Brody. TJ Brody is I suppose that's the highlight of all the signings, because he is, he signed for 4 years at $5 million per year. So he got the most out of all of them. He's 30 years old. He plays the right side with the left shot, which is kind of unique on the D. And this is his first trade to another team. He was drafted and played in Calgary for his whole career. So this, to me, I think it's gonna hopefully it works out. I think it will. Hopefully it won't be like the Tyson Barrie situation where, but yeah, I don't think it's gonna be like that where he just never. He got off to the wrong foot or whatever, or couldn't get acclimatized to the Toronto environment, that sort of thing. I think this guy, I think it helps the fact that last year, I guess we were trying to get him via trade, but Naz basically nixed the trade sort of thing because he had the no move clause, I guess, in his contract.
And then we ended up with Barrie.
So I think in Brody's case, like, he's obviously seeing that we wanted him, like the organization has been looking at him. So he played with Mark Giordano on Calgary's top pairing for a couple of years. So he's definitely a top 4 D man. He plays like over 20 minutes a night. He's a good skater. And he's really, I watched all the player interviews actually on mapleleafs.com, and he is very quiet. He's a quiet leader. He reminds me of John Tavares a little bit that way. So I think just his demeanor in that when you see, whereas Wayne Simmons, he was driving in his car and you could just tell, like, he knew like he's in the show and he knew that sort of thing. Whereas this guy, he was a little bit more on the laid back kind of style, sort of, and quiet and just answering the questions. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely going to go well, whether he plays with, like I said, we're not going to get too much into who he plays with, but most likely it's going to be with Riley. And, but we addressed finally what we definitely need on the D. Yeah. And what do you think about it? You good with it?
Well, yeah, I think it's going to be good. There's a lot of people out in Calgary that really think that he, his support on the back end is what made it possible for Giordano to, put in those kind of Norris Trophy-esque type of performances as an older defenseman at the time too. Like, people think he kind of came out of nowhere, but the fact that he has somebody like this to play with, that really helped his game. And that's something that, Riley, especially last year, did not have. The other thing about him being quiet, I do think that Tavares is a good comparison because they're quiet, but I think that he can handle what Toronto is going to bring as far as the attention and stuff, because I just want to look back to even when he was that great video that I'm sure so many people have seen of him in the skills competition when he was an 11-year-old, and Henny asks him, so the Leafs said they want to give you a contract. What do you say to that? And he says, sure. So, he can handle being in front of 20,000 people screaming and everything, as an 11-year-old, and handled it like a star there. So, I think that he knows what it, just like that's the other thing. They seem to be bringing back all of these Ontario boys into the fold. So you got to love that. And that's the difference between this guy and, say, Barrie last year's. This guy knows what he's getting into. He knows what it means. He had a taste of it when he was 11. So I think I'm pretty cool with it. obviously, we still have to see what happens on the ice. He's not like super young at the age of 30. So, but we talked about many times about our training staff here and everything too. So I think that, we can keep basically careers prolonged as well. So keep people on the ice. So let's move on to our next signing, which was a little bit of a surprise to me, although I did kind of hear, a bit of buzz about it. But Zach Bogosian, who is actually, I should say, Stanley Cup champion, Zach Bogosian.
Yeah.
He is a defenseman, right shot, also 30 years old. He was signed for 1 year at $1 million. He played with the Buffalo Sabres last year, got traded to Tampa, and he won the cup there with them this year. And, actually had a quite a pivotal role and brought toughness when they needed it. And obviously, I think everyone's seen the replay of the beautiful assist he had on Blake Coleman's goal. So, he's not the guy that is going to be driving the offense, but he is a stay-at-home, tough presence. And I think that he's definitely going to add something there. And the other thing is that I seem to really feel that when Dubas and Keefe and Shanahan were talking to all of these people, they were really clear on what they wanted from these guys, and that they weren't necessarily coming here to play necessarily a regular role like day in, day out, and they're going to be used in different ways. So, and to man, they've all kind of said, we're here to do whatever is asked of us. So whether he's going to be playing every night, we don't know for sure. But he is there definitely to be, for forwards when they're coming at Freddie to be, thinking twice about who's on the ice. And so I think that's pretty cool. He was a first-round pick, also notably, and the third overall selected by the Atlanta Thrashers. So what do you think of the Bogosian pickup, Chris?
Pretty high. I was actually surprised that he was third overall in the draft. I didn't realize that he was considered that good of a defenseman at the time, because you really didn't hear about him until, me personally anyways, I didn't hear about him until last year in Buffalo, and then he had some disagreement with the way he was being played, I guess, sort of thing in Buffalo, and then he moved on to Tampa. Lucky for him to go to the Stanley Cup champion, and I mean he definitely adds. He's going to give us that grit on the back end, and he's gonna being that he's obviously won a cup now very recently, and he went through that whole thing too of being in the bubble. I think has to that experience too. I think he's gonna help a lot with wherever he plays, because he played with Hedman a lot too. I think the being diverse, to diversify his the play sort of thing. If he's playing he could play a little bit on a top pairing if he had to, but most likely he'll be on the bottom pairing. But like you said, he's all these players have said it's just wherever they want us to go, that's what they're gonna do. And then he's another player, he's from upstate New York actually, but still I guess close enough to Ontario. But he actually wanted to come to the Leafs even last year. He wanted to come here at the trade deadline. It didn't work out. He went to Tampa, but I mean, I think it's a better option than Martin Marincin, that's for sure. Okay, and this is the latest pickup that we're going to talk about next is Jumbo Joe Thornton, and a spry 41-year-old centerman from Davos, Switzerland. He's our latest prospect pickup. And anyway, he signed for 1 year at $700,000. He has played 70 games last season with the San Jose Sharks.
He's obviously known for his stick passing skills, and he's really still good on the draws. Last season was the first time in 13 years he was below 50 percentage average on the faceoff and wins. He was just shy of that at 49.4%. Obviously, he requires no introduction.
Yeah, it's
people know about Joe Thornton, and from Boston and then San Jose. He has been a captain. He has really done it all. I think if you watched him speak at all, anytime he's done his media availability, or even just the recent interview that they had on with the Leafs after the signing, this guy is bringing so much to our team. I didn't really necessarily think that, we needed to get him, and I was not sure whether we should, because he's a 41-year-old guy. But after I listened to him talk, I'm like so excited about this, because he is adding just so much to our room, and he is another one that is like picking guys up by the back of their jersey and saying, come on, I have to win this cup. So,
I have to say, I wasn't excited about it either at first. It's like I've jumped on the bandwagon with all the excitement that was created about it. I guess two things that I liked, or that I enjoy. Well, three things actually. He is actually the last active player to have scored at Maple Leaf Gardens. So that I thought was interesting. Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. So he's the only active player that he's scored at Maple Leaf Gardens. I loved his support of Frederik Andersen. I thought that was very interesting how he was going on about that, and there were a couple of funny comments on Twitter about that, but I took that as a positive, and him trying to basically make note that Freddie, that he loves Freddie, and he thinks he's a great goalie. And then his mention of winning a Stanley Cup. He has that fire in him and I don't know, it's I actually had a good laugh, because I thought, okay, what Patrick Marleau tried, he had that same fire, didn't work for him, so now he's sending Joe Thornton here to try and finish the job and actually get that cup. So because they're both older players, and that's the only thing left to do on their resume. He's a future Hall of Famer. Like, it's guaranteed Joe Thornton is going to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. But and then the other thing I thought was interesting was Kyle Dubas. There's always a connection somehow to the Sioux Greyhounds. And he actually, because Kyle Dubas was hired by the Sioux when he was like 10 or 11 years old. And that was like the last season that Joe Thornton was there, when Kyle Dubas was, while he was working with the Sioux Greyhounds when he was like 10 or 11 years old, he was watching Joe Thornton play for the Sioux. And there's a connection there too with Manny Malhotra, who's our now assistant coach, who, he actually played at the time, I guess the Sioux played Guelph Storm, and they lost in the playoffs, and Manny Malhotra was on that team on Guelph, who beat. So there's all these little connections, and it's just kind of funny how it all comes together now, comes back together. But so all these things made me more excited reading about these things, and obviously what he brings to the room. It's definitely, and his dad is a huge Leafs fan. Apparently he was in tears, or I heard that when he can't wait to see him pull on the Leaf jersey for the first time. So
that's making me tear up right now.
Yeah. So those are all the things that got me basically on the positive side to say, you know what, this might be a good thing. And then in the room, obviously there's no need to really get into that as to what he's going to bring to that. Just like Wayne Simmons, they're going to be their loud voices, and they're going to bring the positive energy in there, which I think it sounds as though our team needs it.
Well, the other thing is that how boring have post-game conferences been? I mean, they're all canned. Like these guys, Wayne Simmons and Joe Thornton, are not going to be giving the canned answers. They're going to be interesting to listen to afterwards. So
Yeah.
and I guess the only other person who we have right now that speaks a little bit more candidly, I guess, is Jake Muzzin, and a little bit Morgan Riley. He's kind of like a hybrid, so a little bit of canned and a little bit more interesting. But yeah, I think definitely I'm going to be looking forward to the post game a little bit more than I have been in the last little while.
Yeah, and he's going to be wearing number 97. I thought it was cool that Jason Spezza actually offered his number, like to him to take the number 19. But he said, no, none of that. He's going to go with 97. He's worn that like on international tournaments with Team Canada. So he's good with that. So yeah, that's going to be really fun to see when we actually get back on the ice. Hopefully that's sooner than later. But anyways, okay. So next is the goaltending position, which we definitely needed some depth here with Aaron Dell as the third goalie behind Freddie, Jack Campbell, and then we have Aaron Dell, who's 31 years old. He signed a 1-year contract, $800,000, and it's a bit of an upgrade, quite a bit of an upgrade, I think, for a third goalie. Kaskasuo was our previous, goalie with experience there with the Marlies. He played, so Aaron Dell played 33 games for the Sharks last season, and save percentage was .907, which isn't bad for that number of games. And yeah, so I mean, definitely a depth move. We need somebody, and we really need somebody actually to help we have the two young goalies with the Marlies, Ian Scott and Joseph Wall. So they, you really need somebody for them to lean on and to have experience, because both of those goalies had a bit of a tough time with the Marlies last year, and they've admitted that, but we'll get into that into a future episode too. But yeah, and if Campbell doesn't play well, Campbell only played 6 games, right? So we don't know how that's gonna work out. Hopefully he seems to, when he came here too, it was great. Like, he loves being a Leaf, you could just tell, but it's a small sample size that he got in, right? So we'll see what happens. And what do you think about the goalie move?
Yeah, I agree. I think that too, we also needed a little bit more, like you said, mentoring, veteran presence for our young guys that are, growing and getting seasoned, I guess. And we need just some more reliability back there, and so that it's just not all on Freddie and Campbell. And we don't have to worry about the whole situation like we did last year with the Zamboni driver. So
that's for sure. Yeah. And then we had the trade with the Devils, right? So Andreas Janssen traded for Joey Anderson, and he's a right winger, 22 years old. He's a 3rd round pick from the Devils, and definitely, I mean, I thought of this as a salary dump here, because Janssen was making, I guess it was close to $4 million anyways, on his deal. So with all these other moves, we needed to make a change, and I guess Kapanen was the first to go. Now Janssen, and Dubas actually referred. It was interesting. I listened to the kid's interview as well, Joey Anderson's interview, and I don't know, he might be a surprise for us. Rachel Dory, who's I guess a former Devils player information analyst, she wrote a really good article on Twitter. If anybody wants to go to Twitter, or sorry, not article, but a tweet, I guess. It was a thread of tweets she was going on about on October the 10th. She was going on about Joey Anderson, saying like he wasn't really given the opportunity with the Devils. So, and then I saw his interview, and he comes from a hockey family. So his dad and his grandfather are both played the game. And, Yeah, he seems super excited as well, and Dubas described him as a high-end talent. He played in the U.S. development program, and from what I remember, no, it wasn't him. It was Travis. Oh, yes, it was him. I think he actually crossed paths with Austin Matthews at some point. He in the U.S. development program, so there's a bit of familiarity from that. So yeah, what do you think? Any comments on from your side on Joey Anderson?
Well, just like hearing the signing and or the trade initially, I thought, definitely it was a salary dump, but I do think that this is a guy that they have liked, and then once I saw him talking, I see there's a common theme throughout all of these picks, and this guy, like, there is a fire in him. So I do think that what Rachel Dory said, that is super interesting, that he never got the proper development there, and there's certain organizations are gonna, that consider and look at development differently, could have a real diamond in this guy. So he seems like he has that competitive fire, and he seems like another hungry player. So they have gone out of their way as an organization, Dubas and co, to find people that have something to prove. And I think that definitely could pay dividends down the road. And I wrote down, I know that Rachel Dory, talked about him as like a Blake Coleman type player. And, during the playoffs, I think everyone to a man said that you need those kinds of guys on your team to, get over the hump. So, and there's a reason that Tampa picked up Blake Coleman, and look at the dividends it paid. So we'll see. I'm not putting too much on this kid, but he's been a winner at multiple levels also. So, including World Juniors. And there's something to be said for that too.
Yeah.
So then we're going on to our next pickup, which was Travis Boyd. He is a center right winger. I don't actually know a lot about this player, but he's 27 years old. He is a 6th round pick of the Washington Capitals. He is another one of our 700,000 league minimum 1-year contracts. And obviously he is a depth signing. But in a few games, which was 24 with Washington, he showed quite a knack for getting points. He had 3 goals and 8 assists in 24 games. So that's not too shabby. So what did you learn about Travis Boyd, Christine?
Yeah, again, I think it's a depth signing. I think technically, well, depending on how it goes, like some of these players are obviously going to be going up and down with the Marlies too. And personally, I think he played in the AHL with Hershey as well. I think part of the season last year with Washington's AHL team. But he's I guess they said that he's very dependable at center, playing. Like, I guess he has to be you have to fit him into the right spot in order, obviously, to get his the knack for getting points. And the coach there, I guess, in Washington, he was able to do that. And he's that's one thing that some of the players said there in Washington, was that he had the knack for getting points in limited minutes. So anytime that happens, then you know that the guy is at least engaged in the game, even though, let's just say, he's only playing 7-8 minutes a night. It's always good to have that type of player. Yeah. And so that's it.
So for our last signing, we picked up Jimmy Vesey. So he is a 27-year-old, 1 year again at a little bit above the minimum, $900K. He played in the U.S. U.S. college hockey with Harvard, and he went and we went after him back in 2016 when he didn't sign with Nashville because he was a Nashville draft pick. At that time, he opted to not come to our team and became a UFA and signed with the New York Rangers. And I think, I don't know, hasn't really said this, but part of the reason maybe he didn't come here, it was because his dad is an amateur scout with the Leafs. So I think there's, lots of young people are like, I want to make my own name, Yeah. And so he went with New York, which is also an original 6 team, so not too bad. He ended up playing in Buffalo last year, and it didn't work out as well as he would have liked. And so here he finds himself as a UFA again, and this time the Leafs made good, and he decided to come here. And interestingly, when I did a little bit of research, he has a connection with our team, as he was a teammate with Alex Kerfoot on the Harvard team, and they actually played together quite a bit. So he's hoping to maybe get reunited a little bit with him. And I wonder if Kyle Dubas also noted that in his mind, as they had a little bit of chemistry there.
Yeah. And he played actually 2 seasons with Kerfoot, was his centerman for 2 seasons.
Yep.
So
yeah.
So that's a big thing.
And so that could be an interesting third line option. The other thing was watching his media availability after the signing. He is another guy that I noted had some fire in his eyes. He is somebody else, again, that has something to prove. And so I think he definitely wants to make good on this opportunity. So there is definitely method to the whole reason, they made all of these 1-year deals. And that's because, that you either are going to prove something with this team, or you're proving something to the next team that is going to give you a chance next year. So there's a lot of hunger and desire to achieve, which you gotta love. So especially in the bottom end of our roster now. And I think that is super key, because last year we did not get enough out of our bottom 6, which was plainly apparent. So we didn't have, even though some might say that, are we losing secondary scoring, with Kapanen and Johnsson not being on our team? Potentially, yes, but they didn't do all that great on that front last year, or they would still be on our team. I think we could agree. But they are going to get a lot more jump out of this bottom 6, and that is when Dubas was saying we need to be harder to play against. The top 6 is hard to play against because of the offense. The bottom 6 needs to be harder to play against for other reasons. And so that is got to be compete level. So I think that that's something that has definitely been addressed here, and not just on paper. So I think there's a lot of character that was added. So what do you think?
Overall, I think, especially these 1-year deals, I think it's a sign of the times too, with the whole COVID situation or whatever. But I think it's going to work out in our favor to have these 1-year deals and to have these players that are hungry. And just going back to VC for a moment, I also saw that in his player interview. You could just see the drive, or just in his comments, he can't wait to prove people that that he is that player. I guess he played a decent season with the Rangers in his last season. It was just last year in Buffalo, things didn't work out for him. He got injured a bit, but now definitely, like you're saying, with the bottom 6, Keefe basically, it's handed over to Keefe now to take these players and find the options as to what's going to work. And hopefully with the signing of these veteran players, I kind of connected that. I don't know if you probably recall that game. It was versus the Blackhawks. I had to look it up. But when Keefe said that there was a maturity issue after a game in his post-game conference. And that you kind of wonder, you kind of connect with all the addition of these more veteran players. Obviously, you can see from that comment that maybe there was something wrong with the dynamics in the room. Let's just say with they it's like someone was saying that last year was like they left the team to the young guys and said, okay, this is your team. And now they're saying, okay, yeah, no, it wasn't the right thing to let you guys go like that with the roller coaster season the way it was. We need to bring in some stabilizing, some experienced players, veteran players to get us over the top, as what I think Joe Thornton actually said that, like to take us to the next level and to get that ultimate prize is what we're looking for. But yeah, so it's going to be an interesting once camp starts with all the new faces. And then speaking of new faces, we're going to go into day 2 of the NHL draft, which was a couple of weeks ago now. But yeah.
And we're not going to spend too long on this, but we just wanted to give our views of how we saw the rest of the draft play out for the Leafs. Is interesting how the majority of players chosen were from Europe, and most of the picks are of that smaller stature with a high skill level. What do you think of from the second round picks, Christine?
So the second round pick, we chose Roni Hirvonen, who's a center from Finland. And I thought it was kind of cool with him. He found out that he was drafted by the Leafs while he was playing a game. They actually put it up on the scoreboard. So that was kind of that was kind of fun. That was I thought, wow, and all the players came, and like I think they actually came off the bench because there was a whole bunch of players. Anyways, there was more than the 5 guys or 6 guys on the ice. So that was kind of cool. Yeah. And then what about the 4th round pick, Sil?
So our fourth round pick, also kind of more notable. His name is William Villeneuve. He's a defenseman from the Q, and he played for the St. John's Sea Dogs. But the interesting tidbit on him is he was actually coached in minor hockey by former Leaf goaltender Felix Potvin. So, and I've heard lots of really good things about Potvin's coaching. So we're interested to see how William Villeneuve turns out for us.
Yeah, I thought for all of those players that they had their media availability, they all knew a little bit about the Leafs anyways, even if they were like, they didn't know very good English, but they all knew that like we're an Original Six franchise. They seem to have some sort of background on the franchise. So to me, that again goes back to, we've mentioned his name before, Jim Paliafito, the Leafs director of player evaluation, and his influence on the players. When he's scouting, he's always, and the staff, they're always keeping in touch with these players to show their interest and to make sure these players know what it is to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. So yeah, I thought that was great. And I guess it's very much the fact that we were picking, I mean, I know most of Leafs Nation was, and me included too, I wasn't that thrilled that we were going with the smaller stature, the speed and skill, which I think we have a lot of in our organization. But yeah, it's very much going in line with Kyle Dubas's and Shanahan's vision of the team. But as it's been said to me several times, like you can't teach skill, right? So you're better off. I was just going to
say that.
Yeah, you can't teach that. So you're better off.
You can always get the other parts, the complementary things in other ways, which basically that's what they've done through this whole free agent process and through the trades that they've made. Like that's basically how you get the complement and you find your skill in through the draft. So yeah, I think that's basically their MO right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so speaking of Kyle Dubas, what's next for Kyle Dubas? It's actually, we're doing this podcast on the Tuesday, but tomorrow on the 21st is Ilya Mikheyev's arbitration hearing, assuming it goes through, because it can be settled before the hearing, because those things can get a little bit nasty too, and I actually heard Mikheyev himself wasn't really happy about going to this arbitration process. Dubas seems confident he's going to get signed. The Leafs offered him $1 million per year for a 2-year contract, and the player is wanting 1 year at $2.7 million, which is a little bit steep in my opinion. I think, Sil, you agreed with that, but this could actually work out as a good deal if it does go to arbitration, because apparently I found out today that if Mikheyev chose to go to arbitration, that gives the Leafs the option to pick the length of the term, whether it be 1 or 2 years for the next for this deal. So it could end up being a bargain too for us for 2 years. We could go, and Mikheyev, I don't know why he's really going through this. Anyways, it makes no sense. He only played the 39 games last year, so and there's no real comparable to that. But
I heard today that the least amount of games for a person going to arbitration up until now was like 63 or 66 or something like that. Yeah. So it's not really gonna help him much. Mikheyev probably didn't want this option necessarily, but the agent is the one that drives this sort of thing. So it's not necessarily the player. But yes, he doesn't have much of a leg to stand on as far as comparables go. So,
I don't know.
We'll see. So it could end up really backfiring for him.
Yes.
He could end up getting awarded just like the $700K, which is the league minimum.
Yeah. And he could actually too, I heard he could go back to the KHL if he wanted, but it's not really favorable for him either, because if he wanted to come back to the NHL, he can't come back for a lower amount than what was, like, let's say a team offers him a lower amount than what was given to him in this arbitration. He couldn't he couldn't return to the NHL for a lower amount than, let's say he's awarded 1.5 million. And let's just say he goes over to the KHL and he decides, I definitely want to, I want to come back. He couldn't come back for like $900K or something like that. Like, it has to be above that amount. And whether or not, so that it's not the greatest option for him either to go back to the K. But yeah, so we only have right now, according to Cap Friendly, from what I saw this morning, we only had 42 signed contracts and we're allowed 50. And our roster size currently is 21. We're allowed to carry 23 players. But from what Kyle Dubas has been saying, we could go into the season with a 20-player roster. So I don't know.
Well, I think that's part of their MO, because what they have always, what have they been saying all along? That everyone says they're up against it with the cap, and they keep insisting, no, we're not, we're fine. The reason that they're fine is because they have an incredible amount of these waiver exempt players. That means they can ship people up and down. Yeah. And the fact that they have the Marlies so close, they can have people like, on off days and stuff, even for certain games, going down and playing down there and then coming back up. And so then because of that, they're going to be working that. It's the whole thing where with having their own in-house capologist. They're going to be working that cap on a daily basis for their savings.
Yeah. Brandon Pridham
bottom line.
Yeah.
Yes.
Brandon Pridham is definitely earning his paycheck.
That has got to be one of Shanahan's best hires, honestly. Yes. Yeah. Because seriously, they are working it by the minute on this cap situation, and that is how they're going to make it work. So the fact that And that's the other thing, is that they're willing to go down to 20 players on certain nights. So this is going to be looked at on a daily basis, on a game by game basis. So, and that's how they're going to manage it. And hopefully even be able to save some money so that when the whatchamacallit, trade deadline comes up, they may have some money to work with. So,
yeah.
And
it's going to be interesting. There's been a lot of changes throughout the league with all the goalies change. It's going to be weird seeing like Henrik Lundqvist is in Washington and Braden Holtby has gone from Washington over to Vancouver. And so the goalie carousel is like, it's just kind of going to be odd seeing those long, like people that have worn a jersey for so long and then you see them.
And I can't even ever remember where so many top flight goalies have swapped teams in a summer. Like I just don't recall that kind of thing happening to this extent in the past. So anyway.
And really in our case, like for me, it's just two things that I think, just to close off here, like I'm interested. We can talk about this another time. It's a longer conversation maybe, but I just find it so interesting how Dubas has shifted a little bit in the makeup of this team. Just a little bit. He has, I find that a lot of these moves have Brendan Shanahan's fingerprints on it a little bit. And
I'm going to disagree with you on that one.
Okay. All right. So
because I've also seen a lot of or heard a lot of people talk about the makeup of his previous teams. Like if you look at the Marlies, they were not an easy team to play against, and the Sioux Greyhounds also not an easy team to play against. So I think that he has been in 2 years trying to stock up with skill, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think that it may be a mistake to assume that this was not part of his idea going forward, or the fact that he is willing to pivot to adapt to the needs of the club at hand. So
no, he definitely, I mean, he said he was looking at Dallas, actually, at Jim Nill, general manager, what he did with Dallas, being that they just went to the Cup final as well, and he was kind of saying like he took some advice from that as well, from what they did. So it's just it's good to see that he did what he said, which is he's not stuck in one way, right? Like he mentioned that, I think, in the early spring. So I think that's a good thing, but I still think that Shanny had just a little bit of influence there.
I disagree vehemently on that, because
you can disagree.
Kyle Dubas is a very smart guy, and I think the fact that he's young and didn't play in the league there's always going to be people out there like you saying that because Shanahan played in the NHL and had a tougher streak in him, that anything that has to do with that is that any good move in the positive obviously has to be him and not Dubas, because he's not experienced and not old enough and didn't play the game. I don't agree with you at all on that.
Okay.
I think he's a very smart guy, and he's not just a numbers person, and he's been around the game his whole life.
He's definitely smart, and he knows what he's doing, but I just think that,
and I also think that this is not this person makes the decision kind of dynamic that they have at MLSE. I think it's very cooperative and collaborative, and I think they all discuss things together. So there's not one person, Shanahan or anyone else, who's basically making the carte blanche decisions.
All right, you're gonna let me get in my last word here?
Yes.
It's really up to Sheldon Keefe now to get everything right.
Pulled together. Yes.
Put together. Right. Never mind. And as you were saying, they all discuss everything, as a group. And whether it's with Shanahan or Dubas or Sheldon Keefe. And Sheldon Keefe he's been speaking to all these players that we got over the past couple of weeks through free agency and even through the draft. So really, it's now going. It's it's his team. He's going to go in whenever the training camp starts. He's going to go into his first full training camp as the head coach of the Leafs. And it'll be interesting to see where he goes with it, with all these options and how he handles all the different situations that come up. I'm looking forward to it anyways, because right now it's October and there's no hockey, and it's not fun. Not fun. It'll be nice to. It's going to be fun when training camp starts. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And we're still waiting on. There's a few things that could still happen, like we did once the arbitration situation gets worked out with Mikheyev. Dermott still needs to be signed, but there could be a trade as well. So we don't know if it will be Dermott that gets moved or Hall, but something's kind of got to give, because we have, as much depth as we have actually a little bit too many players, and especially if they're planning on going down to a 20-man roster, some of these, somebody's going to have to be moving to make some space. So anyway. So any more thoughts? Anything else you want to mention?
No, that's all I got.
Okay, so one more thing I do want to mention is we have a very special birthday this week. In a couple days, Chris is going to be celebrating a birthday, so we want to wish Christine a very happy day on Thursday. So happy birthday, Chris.
Thank you. And it will be a happy birthday, but with no hockey. Normally we always have our...
That's true. We normally have like a celebratory dinner or something, so we can't really do that this year.
Anyhow, it'll be okay. I'll have my little birthday cake here. Blue and white birthday cake.
And we also have something special that we just launched. Many of you, and I think we talked about it on the last podcast, we have a new partnership with coffee.com, for our listeners and friends that would like to support our show. You can follow us there at ko-fi.com, coffee.com/LTL1917 if you would like to support us in that way. And, we always want to encourage you to keep listening and sending us your feedback. You can follow us on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at LTL1917. We also have our email, ladiestalkingleafs@gmail.com, if you ever want to drop us a line there. But until then, we will talk to you in November and hopefully have some more interesting things to talk about. So
I'm sure.
For now,
bye-bye.
That's all we have. Bye.